Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for being on here for our November 22nd Coaching and Teaching Roundtable. This morning, we've got Greg Hiller, the PGA Director of Instruction at TPC San Antonio, who's going to be taking the reins, giving us all a little education. And I know we've got a couple other members of our elite group, Alan Hody, on the call. You can also chime in, add any pertinent experience and comments where necessary. But again, thank you everyone for being on the call. We're excited about these roundtables. We're going to be pushing these out during our Chatter Pro Pros here over the next few weeks and hopefully getting us a larger field to participate in moving forward. As everybody noticed, I am recording the call and we'll post it up on stpj.com under our education tab following. But at this time, Greg, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you, sir.
All right. Scott, thanks for having me and welcome everybody. So the topic that I picked for this week, I'm just entitling it Low Budget, High Budget Teaching Materials. And I'm trying to sort of flock shoot the group here. And I know we've got some very experienced teachers that have all kinds of technology and things in their arsenal. And then there's probably some assistant professionals that might be in level one and they're just kind of getting their feet wet in the teaching business, maybe not even teaching that much, but you know, they need some things too when they go out to give golf lessons. And so I thought what I would do is just share a little bit of my experience, what I have in my arsenal. I've done it with low budget, and now I've got a little bit of a higher budget to use. And so I wanted to sort of share what somebody who's getting into instruction might want to have, so that when they go to help somebody with a lesson, they've got some of the right tools. So I think no matter what your budget is, there's a number of things that are kind of a staple for you. And some of the items that you may need can be dependent on your clientele. So like, for example, myself, I now work at a facility that accommodates a private membership of about 550 members. We also have, we're a resort, so we're sort of a hybrid facility. So we've got hotel guests. And then I teach some people from the local area and surrounding area that are non-members that are students. So I've got a number of people that I kind of help. And so I just thought it would be good to let all of our professionals know that teach, you know, hey, here's some good ideas. As we get into the higher budget things, that's going to be a lot, you know, easier to talk about because, you know, like Breck's on the call and he's got a lot of experience with technology. Alan's on the call, and you know, these are guys that, I don't know if, you know, Brian or Chuck are on the call as well, but these are guys with tremendous amounts of experience with, especially a guy like Chuck Cook, who's taught with technology who seems to always be kind of ahead of the curve on that stuff. So that'll be an easy part of the discussion for those guys to chime in and add their, you know, their counsel on stuff. So I think it's kind of interesting that, like, my teaching bag that I have is a conglomerate of low budget stuff and high budget stuff. And these are things that are also a reflection of the people that have influenced my playing and my teaching career. So, you know, everybody starts somewhere. And I think that there's a number of items that you want to pick as you go and as you learn, and hang on to those. And you can use those things to share stuff with other people. So, for example, like, what I found to be the people that I've had influence my career pretty heavily have been like local guys here from South Texas, such as like Bill Rogers and Jim Barker. Recently, like Ian Pardaby and the Callaway Master Staff fitting team. You know, Ping Golf, like guys like Jeff Beauregard and Joe Newman, guys that I've learned to teach better from, but have also helped me become a fitter, or whether it's a master fitter or whatever. So like in my teaching bag, obviously most everybody has an iPad. I would say you would have to at least use an oversized or a big cell phone and an iPad, and you can just use the camera if you'd like. That comes standard with the electronics, or you can use, you know, V1 or there's a few other ones, Coach's Eye, and I know guys used to use Huddle a lot before it stopped being serviced. But those would definitely be a must. I've got a club with a training grip. In fact, I've got 2 clubs in my bag that I have a training grip. And as the longer I've taught, I've found that I need people to do things and compare stuff. So, for example, I've got a training grip that is put on purposely weak. And then I've got another training grip that's put on there purposely strong. And so I would want the student to hit balls. They're the same irons. It's 2 exact same irons. One of the grips is on weak. They'll hit balls. Face will come in open. Balls will probably go to the right. And then if it's a really, really strong grip, face will come in more closed. And then they can also, watch balls take off more left. So though that I felt is like really, really helpful, like big time for beginners and stuff. I also have like a lie board and face tape, a weighted club. So, if I look at somebody, I can put a lie board down. I can look in divots too, just with the naked eye, but I worked a lot years ago with Henry Griffiths. And so, Randy Henry was a big influence on me. And so he taught me how to read a lie board. And for those of you that, like to use one of those, when you really know how to read a lie board, it's very, very helpful so that you can get sort of a good take on somebody's lie angles, how the face is coming in. And you can do a quick check on somebody just in case, something needs some sort of a tweaking. I also have demo drivers in my bag. So I've got a 9-degree turned down to an 8, and then I've got a 13.5 degree driver head turned up to 15.5. And so there'll be times that I might turn one of the drivers to a different loft, hand it to somebody, have them hit it, because what I've found in the past years that I've played and taught that, the golf club influences your motion. And so sometimes you can take another club, and by making a big difference in the loft setting or what have you, you can start to sort of push and force a motion through that maybe you're having trouble getting without the club. So I also have 2 wedges in my bag, one with very little bounce, one with high bounce. And this is especially important when you're teaching short game lessons. I always want to know how the student's club is going through the turf and how it's interacting. And if it's digging a little bit too much, is the club coming in a little bit steep, or could the club be inhibiting stuff? And if that happens, what I'll find is that that'll definitely influence how their hands are working through the ball. And you can give somebody a wedge with more bounce, and all of a sudden their hands kind of start to quiet down, and maybe they stop scooping because of that. So, but having those items in the bag has been super helpful. The weighted club I like to have, I have a weighted club and an orange whip. And I use those a lot just to see what the strength of the student is. The weighted club's pretty heavy, but if it's really taxing to somebody, I kind of get a sense of what kind of forearm and hand and arm strength they've got. And, there might be things I can't get them to do. They may not be able to take a whole lot of divot if they're not real strong. For short game stuff, having things like rings, just little wire rings or little targets. So when you're chipping and people are trying to land it in a certain spot, you've got all those things. You can say, we're going to land it here. So there's a preciseness to stuff. You can also use them for putting, kind of sprinkle stuff across the green, just have them putt to stuff so they don't have to see a ball go into a hole. They can work on distance control, like in their putting. Chalk lines for putting. You can even snap chalk lines on full swing if you wanted to, get some precise lines on the ground. Swim noodles, alignment sticks, and then I use a lot of stuff from Eyeline Golf. And one of the items I like is called a speed trap. And you can put, it's basically like an H-shaped looking lie board and you can put foam little miniature noodles up. And so if somebody comes over the top, they'll actually physically run into this stuff. And I don't know about the rest of you, but the experienced teachers, but what I've found that really helps me along with these items is to have stuff that when they hit it or when they make a bad motion, they actually get penalized for it. Like some people may not be able to feel the difference in the swing pass, but if you have something there that they're going to run into if they come over the top, or if they come way too far inside, they'll hit a piece of foam, they'll hit a piece of plastic, they'll hit an alignment stick. I guess you got to watch out how heavy a gauge items you're using. You don't want to put rebar in the ground or something, but things like that I have found to be very, very helpful. So that when they don't make the correct motion, they see it, they feel it by running into something, and then you can try to get them to move in a different way. I don't know if anybody else has had, anything that they maybe want to add to the items that I mentioned, but I've always tried to.
Greg, real quick. So can you go back and talk a little bit about, I think all this stuff is awesome, by the way. Can you go back and talk a little bit more, maybe in detail, about what you mean by reading a lie board? So I think you're talking about more than just Langle, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yeah. So I know some of these things have, there's varying opinions on them and stuff. And what I have found, when I was growing up and learning how to club fit and stuff, a pro would have you hit a shot off of a lie board, and then they would look and see if the mark on the bottom of the sole was on the heel, on the toe, and did that mean the club was too flat or too upright? Well, then when I started working with Randy Henry, he kind of opened up this world of, Greg, we can tell if they're too steep. We can tell if they're too shallow. You have to look precisely at where the mark on the bottom of the sole is. Is it towards the leading edge? Is it towards the back of the club? Is it smearing to the left or to the right? And, there's times when if a face is really open or it's really closed, those are things you can tell. I mean, obviously if a ball shoots out high and way right, the face is going to be open. But when you get like your better players, and you want to know, is this mark kind of closed? Is it kind of open? You can tell somewhat by ball flight, but just having the reinforcement of looking at face tape on the face, and then lie board tape like on the bottom, which is, they're basically one and the same kinds of tape, but just looking at that mark and understanding how the club's being delivered into the ball and what kind of changes do you need to make, whether it's their golf swing or whether it's the equipment. Does that help you, Alan?
Yeah. So everything that we do is obviously based on the idea of being able to help a player manage ball flight, correct? So whether it be managing ball
Correct.
flight or at least just hitting it solid to start with. Now, would you agree that when you're using a tool like a lie board, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're trying to make everything, if you will, perfect, right in the middle of the Langle, right in the middle of the sole? It's all about being able to use it, like you said, from a reading standpoint, so that you can start identifying what adjustments you need to make for ball flight.
Correct. Yeah, I would. Just from my own experience for myself, if you were to grab my 7-iron, put face and sole tape on my club and have me hit a shot, the lie angle mark on the bottom is not going to be perfectly in the center. It's going to be a little bit on the toe. But just to confirm what you said a minute ago, every golf lesson we give, if I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but it's really as simple as, hey, pro, see that flag stick out there? The ball's not going at that flag stick when I swing. What do we got to do to make it right? And so we've got to look at, their body type, their golf clubs, their motion, their fundamentals, and look at a conglomeration of all that stuff, physical limitations, and take all that stuff into consideration and do that. So yeah, you're right, Alan. It's the goal isn't to always make things, like if we're talking specifically about a live board, there's going to be times that the strike mark on the bottom of the sole will not be in the center, but the ball will fly at the pin. But if we can learn from use that as part of our equation to help the player, then that's what the goal is.
Now, can you even speak a little bit more about maybe help those that don't do it very often understand what you meant when you said you can change the golf club? And I'm going more specifically to what you said about the lofts of a driver. What about changing the loft of a driver is going to affect their golf swing and their motion?
Well, here would be an example of, let's say a player is a little bit stuck on their back foot, and they're sort of hitting kind of up on a ball and they're missing shots. Their path is a little in to out, and their face is open and they're missing shots high and to the right. And all of a sudden you look at, let's say it's a kid, and he's got his dad's driver and he's hitting shots out to the right, and his dad thinks that the ball's going too high, and so he's going to lower the loft of the driver, and so to bring the ball down because it's going too high. Well, he's probably unaware that by reducing the loft, it might make it too hard for the kid to get the ball up in the air. So he hangs back, leaves the face open to get a little bit more height. Well, then because of doing that, he'll hit it high and to the right. Okay, so fast forward to a golf lesson. The kid hits some shots and says, "Hey, pro, I'm really struggling with my driver. I keep leaving it out right." And you watch him hit, and he's kind of hanging back on his club. You've got to also always check their equipment out. And so all of a sudden you get the kid releasing the club. If you didn't check the driver and stuff, and you get the kid releasing the club differently, getting him going into his forward side, well, now he might hit the ball. He's going to hit the ball lower. It might be on line, but it's definitely going to be real low. In his mind, he might be thinking, why would I want to make the correct motion when the ball now goes way too low? So you do that in combination with giving him, say, a higher lofted driver or adjusting his current driver and getting him to launch the ball on the launch angle he needs and make the proper motion for it so he gets rewarded for doing it.
Very cool.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Other teachers on here have any comments about how they kind of use some of those same things the way Greg does? Breck? Breck may have fallen off there. I know Ashley. Ashley, if you're still on the call, I know Ashley kind of operates. She operated for a long time as she started teaching, I would say within that that lower budget like you were talking about, Greg. Ashley, can you give any insight on things that maybe you've done?
Yes, thanks. Thanks, guys, for having me on the call, by the way. I think I've used a lot of similar stuff, but there's actually some stuff out there if people are looking for launch monitors. Garmin just came out with a new launch monitor for $600 that does include path, face angle, and attack angle, which I think is kind of cool. Can also be used indoors and outdoors. So that's something that I just found recently that might be a good ad for some wanting that, not wanting to spend that $20,000 price tag. But yeah, so I'm thinking about that. But yeah, it's kind of the same stuff. Alignment sticks and noodles and all that stuff's great to get started with.
Has anyone had experience with that Garmin $600 launch monitor, like to compare the path, face metrics versus like a TrackMan or FlightScope or GC Quad?
I've just seen reviews on YouTube. I haven't. It's hard. You can't even buy it right now. It's still kind of on back order. But I'm getting it for my brother for Christmas, so I'm definitely going to get some feedback once he gets it. But I don't know how accessible it is yet. But I know it's kind of on the way, 5 to 8 week range.
Okay.
I would say there's another pretty cool one that's on the way. I'm not sure how many of you have ever heard of Full Swing Golf. Full Swing Golf, they historically do indoor simulators. Tiger is actually a majority owner of the company. Tiger went to them probably 5 or 6 years ago and said, "Hey, I want you guys to build me a launch monitor that is just as, if not more accurate than any of the best ones out there right now. And I want it to be affordable so that everybody can get one." So I think it's going to be probably around the $4,000 to $5,000 price tag. And from what I've heard from the guys in the engineering side of it, the numbers they're able to get and that they are getting from it are very, very similar to, if you will, a TrackMan or Foresight. So I know it's going to be a pretty high quality piece of equipment. I know that there's a bunch of those little tools out there, and I think they all have some validity. I would say that from my experience, I think they all work well as long as you don't try to overly compare them too much to each other. And all I mean by that is if you use TrackMan, well, just get into what the TrackMan says and use those. That way you have some continuity and consistency to being able to recognize what's going on. Or for those that use the Foresight, and I think they're pretty similar. So I would say the same thing for these lower, less expensive models. I know FlightScope's got some of those small ones out there that are doing some pretty cool stuff. And if you got into it and started using it, whatever those numbers are, you start recognizing how to use it to help players get better. I mean, I think that's kind of what the name of the game is. So it doesn't have to be that $25,000 tool. If you start understanding what that $500 tool does, and you can start using it to help people recognize how to get better, man, jump on in there.
Yeah, I noticed there's quite a few that are coming around that 3,000 to 4,000. What, Alan, you might know the Bushnell is partnered, it looks like, with Foresight, and they're showing path and face as well, but it's at a $3,000 mark. How's that different from Foresight owns GC Quad as well, right?
Yes.
And their lesser expensive one, the GC2 maybe, or
GC3, I think it's called.
But it's around $5,000-6,000, and it only shows ball data. So what is this Launch Pro? They're coming. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't. I mean, I've talked to the guys more about the 3 and then the Quad. Obviously, the 3 is just a scaled down version of the Quad, so that they can give some ball data to those that are wanting some information about that. I personally would tell you that if you're looking for club data, I don't know if the club data gets. I think the club data that comes off the Quad to me is probably a little bit more understandable and readable for most people, whereas for those of you that are using radars, so those that sit on the target line versus one that sit on the caddy view, so the Quad's camera based and all the other ones are radar based. The radars, the only caveat that goes into being able to teach with the radar is you have to understand the effect of face contact and what it does to some of those face numbers. So if you get pretty good at reading that, well, then radars, I would argue to say, are probably always going to be the most accurate when it comes to what the ball does. But then you have to learn how to decipher the club data. And then when you start getting to the ones that are more camera based, so the ones that sit on the caddy view, like a Foresight, they are probably more accurate and requires less of that figuring out what the club data means. It just is what it is based on how they read it. But then you might get some smaller discrepancies in the ball data. Although in the testing that I've been doing on it recently, it's very, very little discrepancy. So, and quite honestly, I think because I've been using TrackMan now ever since it came out, and the idea of learning how to decipher the numbers, because they change drastically with face contact, having to learn how to understand what the numbers are and how they affect ball flight based on what they did in contact was great learning as well. It kind of, right in the beginning years ago, like it would just kind of blow your mind on like, oh, how did that golf ball do that when the numbers said this? And then it just became, oh, it was mishit. Got it.
Yeah, I've worked with Alan just because I believe you know a lot more about this technology, and I don't really know what these other numbers who they are, but so I'm going to keep asking you. But FlightScope was the original radar launch monitor, correct? And then TrackMan kind of built the technology off them. Is that so? Wouldn't FlightScope be as accurate as a TrackMan? I've had both. I currently have the TrackMan, but FlightScope being so much cheaper at the for the premium one, $10,000. What's the popularity of TrackMan or
JJ? This is Robert Simpson. I actually have a FlightScope, and there can be some discrepancies on it because it's not. Because the software on it isn't as good as the TrackMan is. So if you misalign the FlightScope to the target line, or if they change the target line in the middle of a swing, in the middle of a session, it's going to show much different numbers. But if you get it set up right, you take the time, you make sure you're going through the alignment process on it, then the numbers are pretty good on it.
I think they're all probably dependent on being able to get them set up well. Greg, do you have TrackMan now?
I do, yeah. I actually, sort of like a lot of the guys, sort of started from the ground up. I taught with nothing, and then technology-wise, nothing, and then I actually invested in a GC2 that was refurbished. Just got my hands on one of those and used that for a while. And then I actually bought, through kind of a special they had at a PGA show, bought a little swing caddy when those things came out, and just used that until I think I've had my TrackMan now for 2 years, and I've sort of worked my way up the ladder technology-wise. But at least I've messed with like the Mevo Plus, and some of the other ones. And I think it's the only thing that I've found is like the cheaper ones, like the Swing Caddy and the Mevo, I get really good numbers with them off of a mat, or if I'm hitting shots, somebody's hitting shots off of a tee with the balls teed really low. If somebody takes a little bit of a divot, sometimes the debris will give me weird numbers, like if I'm doing wedge yardages or something like that. But a GC2, if you can find one of those used or something, for those of you that are looking for something cheaper and are willing to invest a little bit of money in your teaching concession, I think that's a good way to go. And also, you got to give credit to all those people trying to build something really good at that price point. I think it was her name Ashley that mentioned the Garmin model? I mean, just something like that could give you club data at that price is, and if it's pretty darn accurate, that's incredible when you think about it.
Yeah, and my main thing, because I use my TrackMan for teaching, but I want to give players like access when they practice to use, I don't want to invest in another TrackMan because I don't have that kind of money, but I want something that I know is going to help them and not hurt them if it shows like path face type metrics on it. So right now I just have a ball data one with SkyTrack, which seems to be accurate indoors when I compare it to TrackMan for ball data. Not the spin, but I mean carry distance, the basics for someone that's practicing distance control. But I'd like to get a little bit more advanced one for players to use when they're practicing. They rent time to use it. So
I would tell you, if you're looking for that super high quality one, I would tell most, unless it's still completely out of your price range, I would tell everybody to kind of wait on that Full Swing. And disclaimer, Full Swing doesn't do anything for me. It's just that I know the guys that are involved with it, and I know how they operate. And then obviously when you have somebody like Tiger owning the company, I can't imagine Tiger's going to let anything out there that's not good.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
And for those of you that saw, everybody see Tiger post something on Twitter yesterday?
I got an email yesterday or something, but I didn't see that.
So if you look at that radar sitting behind him, that's that new Full Swing. So my guess is it was him not only showing everybody he's hitting balls, but he may be plugging that little Full Swing monitor too.
I'm sure.
I don't think using it. It was angled about 20 degrees left. Did you see that?
I did. Yeah, I saw that. And I'm not sure. Maybe they can kind of like TrackMan. I think maybe you might be able to adjust target and everything on it too. But now for those of you that don't have a radar, and I think probably most of the coaches on here probably have some version of this where I'll put, whether it be alignment sticks or cones or something out in front of the player that I know is already on a certain, if you will, a certain degree of path, so that they can just start understanding where that golf ball's taking off, where that golf ball's curving. So for those of you that can't afford a launch monitor, you can build. I think I heard James Lights, he used to do it same thing years ago where he had, these cones and stuff out in front of him. He just called it poor man's TrackMan. And this is when he already had a TrackMan. It was just something that he had set up so that the player could create those visuals. And for those of you that ever come out to our place, we have a section at our place that always has that kind of set up. So any of the other coaches on here do it that way?
It's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, Alan. I did the same thing before TrackMan. I don't know who it was. Somebody published an article, and what they had you do is walk out like 20 yards out in front of you, put an alignment stick in the ground, and then take like 5 paces to the right, put a stick down, 5 paces left of that, put a stick in, and just when balls take off out of that window, hey, that in the world of TrackMan, that would be face and path numbers of about this or that. And I actually used something similar to that, just trying to figure out when I got ready to get some kind of device, how could I understand this? How could I make sense of it all? So when I did get something, it wasn't so overwhelming.
I think Chase Cooper just messaged in. He's having a hard time unmuting himself, but he said one issue with Full Swing that he knows of is, as of right now, they're not allowing the data to go to any external source. So right now it's just being displayed on the monitor. Obviously, being a simulator company, they may be trying to protect some of that too, so that people don't stop spending money on big simulators. But I think the whole moral to all this is you could go a couple different routes. You can spend money on it. You can not spend money on it. And for those of you that are kind of just getting going into it, don't feel like you got to go out there and spend money doing it. But if I were you, I would go maybe spend a little bit, go and experience those tools on your own. So whether it be contacting one of the other coaches that's on here and going to either spend some time with them, pay them for some time to be able to get on that tool so that you can start recognizing what they do. It gives you an opportunity to test them, and then it just kind of expands your knowledge base. Breck, what do you guys use over there?
All right. My internet's been cut, but I have 2 TrackMans, and I also have an old FlightScope X2 that I have in a closet that I don't use. So that's where we are right now with TrackMans.
Sounds like Breck has a FlightScope for sale.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had, you know, I've just for I've got a teacher that dabbles with it a little bit, but I've had, you know, there was issues with it early on. Some of the newer ones I haven't experienced with, but I got to the point where I was almost kicking it at one point. So, but so anyway, no, I think they've evolved as well. And, you know, TrackMan still throws out weird numbers. I think basically historically though, TrackMan did a better job early on than FlightScope. FlightScope would basically, not that it was incorrect per se on the numbers, but it would just give you goofy readings. Like if you're hitting off a mat and some guy hit behind it and it bounced into the ball, it would read like 3 up, where TrackMan would understand to not give you a number, right? So it was more about I think TrackMan just did more due diligence and more data testing and had more data points that it could throw out, and FlightScope was just kind of a little bit more giving you what it was. You know, in FlightScope, they were the pioneers of even the radar back in the ballistic missile stuff. So I think their stuff is a lot better. I think the other thing about TrackMan too, as you know, is it's more of like, it's like in a sense, oh, God is speaking, right? Like the gold standard. And it doesn't have to be that way. I think that's changing. I just got back from the summit. I mean, Foresight, the Golf Magazine, Foresight's making a huge run right now with a lot of their stuff. And it sounds like you're using Foresight, aren't you? Where y'all are, Alan? Are you?
No, we actually have 2 TrackMan, and I'm almost to the point where you were with your FlightScope. I'm ready to kick it. And it's more from a standpoint of the way that our building works is we have a lot of metal around.
Yeah.
And according to what TrackMan is telling me, we get a bunch of missed shots because we can hit from indoor to outdoor, watch the ball fly. But we get a bunch of shots where it'll pick up the initial data and then it'll just completely let go of it about halfway down. And the 2 reasons they gave me were we either have too much metal around, which I can't do anything about, or because it's a radar, and I didn't actually know that there was this much of an issue with it. But if you get a lot of crosswinds to where there's a lot of turbulence of wind right around the radar, it completely distorts the radar. So they think it's a combination of metal, which I don't think it's that. It really seems to happen when we get those really crazy windy days where, because our range, we hit towards the south, which, as you know, in Texas, the majority of the time we got south coming right into our building, which is good for temperature, but bad for TrackMan. But yeah, anytime I've got a couple of students that have quads, and when they bring them out, obviously there's no issue because everything's camera based. Now, as soon as we step outside and get out of the building, well, then I don't know if there is a better tool when it comes to accuracy of what the golf ball is doing than TrackMan. So it's something we'll always have and we'll always keep, but I think we're going to add on to with some of the quads.
Good. I had a quick question, not to digress or pivot back, but on the club fitting, and this could be for Greg or whoever. I've always looked at club fitting kind of like, and I don't do much anymore. I did some back in the day, and I actually went through Henry Griffiths back in the 90s as well. And back when I went and got fit, and I got fit with 2-inch over, like 3-degree upright, and I was 8 irons like 215, and back in that kind of, you know, day where they were going really long, and of course they evolved, but they really pioneered club fitting. And when I've looked at club fitting, you know, with players, I've always looked at it like it could go 3 different directions, right? You're either fitting to what the player's doing, you're fitting to what the idealistic way you would want a player to swing, or somewhere in the middle, right? And so, like with the live board, and I want to hear Greg on this. I find the value in the live board, but I also find the live board can be a little misleading, and so, you know, take like a toe, for instance. I mean, if you open a club, it's a toe mark. If you close a club, it's a toe mark. If you have a high handle, it's a toe mark. And so, from a fitter's perspective, because I see it a lot, especially with, let's say, high school players or even adults, it really doesn't matter, juniors, where somebody's gone and got fit and the clubs are way too upright, probably hair long, stuff like that. And I'm not saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent at that point for how the player's swinging, but from a fitter's perspective, you know, my question to Greg, I guess, because it sounds like he's doing a little bit more fitting than I do. Are you looking at that live board and saying, okay, if somebody's got a center mark, but yet they're early extending for the host of a jillion different reasons, and they're standing up, and that's the way they're soling the club, and then all of a sudden, you know, you want them in a, you know, turning in a right side men more and all this stuff, and the handle's lower, and now this thing's coming in and heel slamming and all that. I mean, obviously that's an easier fix from a light tweak, but then on the other end of it, you know, if it is upright, they'll be more encouraged to stand out of it and do all that to have the ball not go left, right? So all this snowballing. So my question is, from a fitter's perspective, you know, where's your take on that? And in those lines of, like, where are they being fit, where they are in the middle, idealistic, all that. I mean, that's such a huge communication thing I think with fitters is, like, you know, because I've got a fitter across the range there that if I send a player, you know, I'm like, okay, I don't want this guy upright. I don't want, you know, I don't care if he's hitting it a little further and it's turning over or whatever. So I just want to know what y'all's take is on that.
Yeah, thank you, Breck. I think sometimes my reasoning with the live board is, first of all, I just want to get an exact look at, hey, how do their clubs fit them? Where are the marks currently fitting? And then, based on my communication with them, kind of what I'm discerning, where I think this needs to go. You know, I may just ask them some questions. I may not even tell them, like, where the mark is hitting on the bottom and stuff. And then we may make some changes, and I may put the live board back down 15 balls later and just double check to see what's changed. Or there might be times that I'll just grab a demo club and say it's a 2-degree flat iron standard length, and I'll just see how it marks differently and where the ball takes off. So a lot of times what I'll use that for is more just sort of, where are we? And is this confirmation of the direction we need to be going? Because I've erred the wrong way too. You know, it's easy to give somebody a different golf club, hoping that you get different marks and maybe you can get tied up in that part. And I've also had the experience, like you've said, where you can do anything you want to their golf clubs and they're still hitting it on the toe and they're still doing this and that. So I use my stuff. It's tailor-made to the need of that student, whether are they there for a club fitting or am I just making some changes and I just want to see, I want confirmation of what's happening as we're progressing.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks for that. I was just, because I'm always the take of, you know, how fitters that are doing it more day in and day out are going about it. Because at the end of the day, you know, when a player, especially the everyday golfer that's not really going to work on whatever, I mean, you've got to put a club in their hand that gets them to perform better and hits it further and tightens dispersion and all that. And then when they see that, it's you know, they'll write that check for whatever. But it's always a delicate balance between the fit of how I would always look at where you want them to go versus where they are now, and how fitters balance that. So I appreciate you saying that, Greg. Thanks.
So I can tell you a couple of the ways that we'll use it. And I know JJ just asked about the dynamic lie metric on TrackMan. And yes, it will have some variance, but I think it has probably no more variance than somebody's variance in all the other parameters as well when it comes to path and face to path and all those things. Now, so I'll use that dynamic lie measurement on TrackMan because, if anything, what it's doing is, until I've gotten video, it's given me a little bit more insight in just simply how they deliver the club. So for those of you that haven't, and there's some great coaches out there that have been talking for a while about how a player is, either their intention or the way that their body moves and how they're going to deliver the golf club. So if I see a player come in there, and let's say they're pretty normal built, and when I say normal, 5'10", 5'11", nothing really crazy going on in arm length and all that good stuff. And all of a sudden I see dynamic lie angles that are, let's say with a 7-iron, all of a sudden they're 64, 65, 66. Well, I immediately know, and you can see this as they're doing it too, they are probably delivering the handle high, which means they're probably going to have a little bit more right side bend in there. So high handle, right side bend. Well, depending on what that player is doing in ball flight, we'll make adjustments into the lie. So if I start seeing that they're in that position and now they're forced to create a massive amount of face rotation, well, I'm either going to start looking at the shaft because it's not helping them square the face up, or you have to go with the lie angle, right? And then you get a player. So let's say a player like, who could I say? If anybody can think of Jason Day. So Jason Day kind of delivers with a little bit more right side bend, handles really, really high, likes seeing the golf ball move right to left. So because of that, he's either going to have a massive amount of face rotation with his hands and arms, or his golf clubs have to be more upright to be able to accommodate that. Versus now everybody picture kind of Sergio Garcia. So Sergio Garcia, handle comes in pretty low. I would say not far away from where he probably was at address ultimately. And then he also likes seeing the golf ball probably move more left to right. Well, because of those two massive differences in the way that they deliver the club, along with what they want to see in ball flight, man, it wouldn't surprise me to see that their lie angles are 5 or 6 degrees different from each other. So we'll use, and even without TrackMan, I think you have to first figure out, how is this player delivering the club? And is that something that we want to have? If we do want to have it, and that seems to be where they manage, let's say, path better, well, then use the lie angle to affect the club, to club face, because lie angle is going to have a effect on the club face, and that's why it affects the direction. So everybody understand real quickly, does everybody understand the idea that lie angle affects the club face, even though it might not be because of the rotation of the club face? So for those of you that have ever had and the more loft that the club has, the more effect that lie angle has on the club face. So for those of you that, anybody ever remember those little magnetic pointers that you can put on a club face? So get one of those. I think you can get them on GolfWorks or wherever. Put one on a wedge. There you go. Breck's got one right there. Oh, he's holding the Sharpie on there, so you can do it that way. So keep doing that, Breck. And you'll notice that as Breck's changing that, the direction of that Sharpie is changing, but he's not rotating the face, not rotating about the shaft. So that's why it also went back to earlier when we asked Greg the question of, does it mean that we're always trying to make that lie angle flush out perfectly down on the ground? No, not necessarily. That's why we have to be careful of those demo days and those fitting days and the people that are going into, let's say, the big box stores, because all they're going to do is try and make that thing flush out on the bottom, because that's all they have. They don't really have ball flight. You as instructors, even the ones that are indoors, you can use that information and then immediately try to get them back outdoors or get some feedback from them once they go play, so that you can figure out what adjustments that need to be made. Now, I'd say that's probably also why when we do club fittings, we're trying to put people in clubs that we know have adjustability, which majority do. All you need is a loft and line machine to be able to adjust those things. But kind of like Greg does, have some different ones in your hand, have some different ones in your teaching bag. You put those things in players' hands, you will start seeing some differences in what's going on with the ball. And then like Greg does, you can use it to influence which direction they kind of instinctually now are going to have to go out of necessity, because you've done something to change the ball flight.
Alan, to piggyback on what you just said, another really helpful tool that I use, and you can just Google this and get it. You don't have to have a TrackMan, is their ball optimizer sheet. And what you'll find is you'll get somebody that'll come in and say, I want to hit it farther. I want to, my driver, I'm trying to get, say it's an amateur player, mid handicap. I'm trying to, I just want to hit it like 260 or whatever. And then you take their stats and all you do is you get club head speed and you plug that number into that sheet. And what you'll find is that the guy physically can't hit it that far. And so you can sort of help them understand, like they might also say, yeah, I was at golf big box store XYZ. And, they said, you want your spin to be 2,000 or 3,000. And that's really good. Well, if you have the slower the club head speed, the more spin you actually need to keep the ball in the air, and the higher the launch has to be. So I will just simply show them that sheet and say, hey, you've got a club head speed of whatever, 85 miles an hour. The shortest you'll ever hit it, if your numbers are reasonable, is about 200 yards. You can hit it almost 225. There's only one way we can get to 250. We got to get your club head speed increase. We have to, or if they're launching it too low or something like that, or they're not spinning it enough or something. That carry optimizer is huge and is super helpful for me, whether I'm teaching just a regular lesson or I'm doing a club fitting.
Absolutely. Chase, are you still on the call?
Yeah, I am. One of the things I would add real quick that you guys have kind of said, and to Greg's point, we use the Ping driver optimizer chart a ton too. So if we've got club head speed and we've got attack angle, it'll show basically launch and spin characteristics, or optimal launch and spin. The other thing, to Breck's point, that I think was awesome is I think fitters at times, they fit too much towards like right now or towards today versus necessarily going into like where the player's going. And that's why, to Breck's point, you see a lot of long clubs that are too upright. And instead, if the fitter will ask, okay, are you doing anything golf swing wise? And that's why I think it's so important for golf instructors to either have a fitter that they're really close with or dabble in the fitting a little bit, just so that way they can have a say and say, look, we're trying to lower the handle. We're trying to get out of the right side bend. We're trying to do all these things. So fit him into something that will almost incentivize him to start moving that direction.
Alan, in an instance like this, you can pretty much see how, like on the high budget area that I spoke of earlier, that, the technology stuff, that kind of just takes off on its own and stuff. I would think, just to kind of circle back to what I had mentioned in the beginning, and I don't know how many people on the call are assistant professionals or people that don't teach a whole lot that are just looking to learn in that area. I would say the one thing that I want to just reiterate and kind of confirm is the one other thing or the two main points that have helped me is, one, having teaching aids that I can compare stuff when they're doing things right and wrong, like whether it's swim noodles they hit, video, you can compare, hey, here's swing A, here's swing B, or here's before, here's after. And then the other thing is, I don't think you're ever hurt as a teacher by saying, I'm going to work relentlessly on your grip, aim, stance, posture, and get you looking good swinging, get a balanced motion, that you hit the ball well, or that you can try to make the best strike on the ball you can. I don't think you're ever hurt by doing that. And then, the rest can branch off the way it goes, whether they have physical limitations or what the whole, wherever that can take you. But I think sometimes it maybe, if I'm just speaking on behalf of a new assistant professional that teaches maybe 2 lessons or 3 lessons a week tops, and they're on this call, I would say that's probably a great place for you to start. Another thing would be a mirror, so that the student gets an instant feedback with a mirror in front of them, and or an iPad where you can literally snap a quick picture, pull it back up, and say, there is your grip. That's what the perfect grip should look like for you, and just so that they have a good idea of how can I get off on my teaching business as best I can.
Yep, I agree, Greg. And I would say that for those on this call as well, for all the assistants and even the current coaches, I think one of the things that we all probably need to be doing is branching outside of our own comfort zones and making sure we're hanging out with people that make us think. So for all of you that are in and I know it costs time and money to do those things, but let's say for all of you that are in that San Antonio area, calling up those people like Greg and Brian. Where are you at? You're at the Dominion?
Yeah, I'm at the Dominion. Yes.
Yeah. So, calling up guys like, Greg and Brian Gathright and going out and hanging out with them. That's a no-brainer. If you're in the Austin area, going and hanging out with Breck or Chuck Cook, or for those of you that are more junior centric, going out and hanging out with Christy. And there's coaches everywhere that I think, one of the things that I've learned in all these years of hanging around some of these guys is that they really want us all to be better. I haven't really met, well, I shouldn't say that. I've met a few, but most of the coaches, 99% of the coaches that I've ever met are so willing to help everybody else learn. And they're not threatened. There's no threat in this. We all love golf and we want people to be better. So go hang out with those people that are close to you. And if you have time, go hang out with those that are not, and understand that they are probably going to do things probably different than you, and they're going to have different views than you. And if you can be open-minded to that, you just might learn something you didn't know. So I think we're close to the end of our time. Greg, is there anything else that you'd like to finish up on there?
Not really. I always appreciate some of the guys like yourself and Breck and that have so much experience with the technology side of it, adding some of that. And you're some of the people I want to learn from, because I come to the game a little bit later in the technology side. And so, that's all good. And like I said, I tried to sort of flock shoot by touching on the low budget stuff early on, just because I'm in a situation at my club where we have some new staff members, one of which has a passion for teaching. And so I'm in the middle of this right now. I've just given them a bag with a bunch of aids in it. And a lot of times when I buy stuff, I'll buy 2 of them and I'll give one to him. And I look back on a lot of the guys that gave to me unselfishly, trying to help me do stuff. And so, I think we're all at different points in our journeys, but I'm sort of at a point now where, I'm going to help this gentleman and whoever else comes my way to, I can't teach everybody. So I'm just trying to help the people that they're going to help play the best golf they can. So
that's awesome. Greg, appreciate you. Also want to give a quick shout out for those of you that don't know. Breck Spradley just got named to Golf Magazine's Top 100. So well done, Breck.
Well done, Breck.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Also, I don't know if anybody's going to the show. I still haven't got my plane ticket yet, but if you are going, it might be cool one evening to have this group get together for dinner. How those evenings go.
That'd be awesome. I think we should do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Scott, anything else?
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, just want to thank everybody for being on the call this morning. Greg, thank you so much for taking the reins and leading us through this morning's session. For everyone's knowledge, the next meeting of the roundtable will be January 17th, and that's going to be led by Breck and Christy Longfield. And we'll have registration for that open hopefully end of year, if not very first thing in January. And then this call was recorded, as everybody knows, and I'll get my communications team working on getting it edited and uploaded to our YouTube page, hopefully before we head out for the Thanksgiving holiday. And that way you can review that if you missed anything or wanted to rewind and catch up.
Yeah, thank you for that, Scott. Originally, I was going to be on this podcast or program with Tim Hobby. He had a commitment that he couldn't move and stuff. So Tim's been real helpful to me, and perhaps there'll be another time where I'll do something like this with Tim or Brian. But yeah, thanks for having me here, and I appreciate all of you, and thanks again, and have a good Thanksgiving.
Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. Be safe on your travels. Thank you.